This is Jeff Arbuckle.
This is Jason Oliver.
And Jason, do you know what it is that people can catch every Wednesday, each and every week?
It's not another stupid movie podcast, is it?
It's exactly another stupid movie podcast.
Oh, shoot!
You can listen to new episodes of Film Seizure every Wednesday morning starring me.
And me!
And we just sit around and talk about movies. Sometimes they're good movies. Sometimes they're bad movies. Sometimes they're someplace in between. I don't know.
Gross, ugly, delicious, funny.
All those things.
All those things.
So every Wednesday, go to filmseizure.com. You might be there right now listening to this episode that's about to start. But you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at Film Seizure. So let's get started with a new episode.
Enjoy the episode.
Get ready for an encounter with some seriously heavy metal. Get ready for hardware.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
This is Jason Oliver.
Jeff Arbuckle.
And we have another episode of Film Seizure for you.
Yes, this time with 100% more killer robots.
Yes, 100% more. There is, yes.
Actually, you know what? We've kind of had like a little bit of a thing in August. We had Shocking Dark, which had a robot.
A robot, android robot, yeah.
We had Transformers.
Yeah.
With some robots.
Robots.
Some killing.
Yeah.
We've got this one today.
Yeah, 1990s hardware.
Hardware. Definitely a killer robot in that. But the Meg and Megaforce just have Meg in common.
Yeah. Yes, they do. They do. So
yeah,
sure. So yeah.
Hardware. This
hardware.
Is,
oh boy. Where to start with this one? So 1990, this little movie on this little studio called Miramax got made. The better story and the better background on this movie is really about the director himself. The director is Richard Stanley, and I am personally fascinated by Richard Stanley. I kind of went down the Richard Stanley rabbit hole several years ago when I discovered this film, Hardware, and then also probably what other people are most familiar with about his lore would be the fact that he was the original director of The Island of Dr. Moreau with Val Kilmer and was kicked off the movie.
We'll get to that. Because that was
yes.
That's what I mostly yeah. Let's just
So I think I'm driving this episode a little bit because this is one that I brought to the table. I really, really enjoy this movie a lot, Hardware.
I am new to it.
Jeff had just seen it for the first time. I will concede that I do think it goes a little off the rails in the third act. Yeah, yeah. But
I've got questions.
Yeah, we'll get there. But really, for me, what the heart of this movie is in the craftsmanship. It is so much more than just a killer robot movie.
There is if I had one positive if I said, okay, there are lots of things I like in this movie. Some things I'm not so sure about. Like I said, I have questions. But if you were to say, Jeff, boil all the things you like down into one thing, I would say it absolutely has a ton of heart in the right place.
Yeah.
It's a pretty well-made, very small budget movie. Mm-hmm. And there are interesting ways that they make it work.
Yep.
For a science fiction horror movie that could have cost a lot of money. But
it feels a lot bigger than what it actually does. It's the comment that was made while we were watching it about the world building. It is very much a movie of a lot of little details.
Yes.
It takes place in a post-apocalyptic, nuclear wasteland, basically.
They don't set it up really, other than it's hot.
Yeah.
It's red, like the skies are red.
It's radioactive.
It's radioactive. A lot of people are just barely surviving. Like there's a lot of welfare talk.
Yep.
There's a lot of scrap hunting.
Yep. People are really scavenging to survive. There's some sort of war that is happening.
That is happening ongoing. It's current. It almost feels like it's people have forgotten when it began, and there's no end in sight.
Yeah, it's this endless war. Yeah, and yeah, people are essentially it's the world is dying. It's a dying world. There's no coming back from this world, and you're getting the sense that people are finally starting to come around to that idea that, you know what, we had a good run, but I think the world we've finally killed it.
Right. Because there's a through line in this, which I'm sure we'll talk much more about it, of a bill that's being passed that is about, and that people are finding, or they're trying to find support for a bill for basically population control and to essentially sterilize
everyone. Yeah. A clean break with procreation is what the
what the
president called it.
says, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a sense that probably twofold. There's just not enough resources to go around to bring other, to really continue to allow the human race to continue. There's just not. The resources are too scarce, and also the fact that everybody is pretty much radioactive. So,
or at least some degree of radioactive, and seemingly kind of okay with knowing that the end is here.
Yeah,
that this is it. There's no there seems to be no, like, I think a lot of people would make a movie like this and be seduced to the idea of, well, the human race just can't fucking possibly conceive being at the end of their life, so there'd be constant warring and warring, but like street fights and like people just losing their fucking minds. But that doesn't really happen. Like, yes, there is constant war. We mentioned that, but it's not like, oh, you can't go outside and walk the streets because everybody's just gone fucking bonkers. They can't handle.
There's a complacency.
Right. There seems to be not a give up, but a complacency.
Right.
Yeah, we're here. We're at the end.
It's
cool.
actually interesting that you caught that, because that is definitely the intent of Richard Stanley. He's talked about the fact that a lot of the themes of the movie have kind of come out of him growing up in South Africa during apartheid and seeing essentially the government exact this kind of totalitarian control. And really what he kind of has made in hardware is what he would call like a right-wing nightmare. It is truly like humanity has been boiled, slowly, to the point where they're living in slums, but they're still getting an element of welfare, but they're also constantly surveilled. It was also he wanted to make sure that was kind of a point of the movie, that there's cameras on everyone and nobody really cares. We've sort of like slowly given up all of our liberties to the point where we're now at this place where we're actually considering talking about sterilizing ourselves.
Right, and they even made a point that it's like, all of a sudden there's been a huge groundswell of support for the sterilization, and it's right, and there's a little bit of talk of like whether or not that should be the right thing, but we see other things where they talk about stuff like that, like The Walking Dead has talked about it, and it's talked about it in the comic too, where it's like, what kind of world are we bringing more people into? Is that more cruel than just not doing it?
Right, and then the argument there is that, once you stop bringing new life into the world, it's truly, you have at that point given up. Like there's nothing left.
Right, and
as a human condition.
Right, it's like, well, at that point, what's the point in doing anything?
Yeah.
Right. There's a. I would say that there is a strong desire to not just procreate in people, but create.
Yeah.
And and they kind of go together. It's like being a human. It's only natural that you further your, that you are becoming a parent, or that you're furthering the race, or whatever the case may be. But hand in hand with that is also that desire to live, and to live is to create, and to create ultimately leads to procreate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's it's just we're dealing with characters in this we're dealing with a couple, for one, of which one of the two couples is an artist on top of that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like,
so it's kind of tying that idea.
Jill, who is the our protagonist of the movie. She's the anchor of the whole thing. She is an artist. She works with metal. She's a sculptor, basically. And yeah, you're right. Like, she's sort of struggling with this idea of, maybe they have a point. What's the point of bringing another child into this world? It seems cruel, but she's sort of also kind of channeling her own creativity in a way that's maybe more practical.
Right.
Even though one of my things with this movie, and Mo even makes the comment, her boyfriend, who was played by Dylan McDermott, he's like, it would be nice if you actually sold something every once in a while. It's like, who the fuck is buying art in this world, you know?
Because, this is a world where, you could even say the colors of the world are gray and red.
Yeah.
There's nothing there's nothing in between. There's nothing else left. And it's like, if you were to tell me that, the human race is dead in 50 years or whatever, whoever the oldest or whoever the youngest child is, its lifespan ends the human race, or whatever.
Yeah.
In one regard, you could say, well, yeah, I'm going to go out and buy a bunch of comics or buy a bunch of books and just just do what I was going to do when I retire anyway, and just sit back and read. But yeah, you're right. It's like there is a sense in the world that, like, she's one of the few people in the movie that kind of understands that there's still a little bit more to life.
Yeah.
It's like we're all going to die soon.
She still finds value in expressing some part of herself and sharing it. Yeah. Even when she makes the comment that some of the art she creates isn't really for anyone. It's just for her.
Because the thing that she's actually working on, the thing that ultimately gives birth to Killer Robot. So I guess in a way she does procreate a little bit. And it is thanks to him.
Uh-huh.
Oh my God, I just figured it out. All right, well, we are done here.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway. No, like, even though, because she's like, well, this isn't for you.
Yeah.
Because he's like, well, who gives a shit about any? It's like, well, it's not for you. So it doesn't matter what it's about. It's not for you.
So the crux of this movie is Dylan McDermott. You get the sense that he's AWOL from the military, or he's on some sort of leave, and he is coming home for Christmas to see his girlfriend.
Christmas is a big part of this movie,
and it is. And he stops along the way at this sort of scavenger junk shop to sell off some scavenged stuff he's picked up in the zone, as they call it, which
I thought was also interesting. They called the Dune Sea.
Oh yeah,
which is a reference to Star Wars. I would suspect.
Yeah,
the actual purpose, because it's the out beyond the Dune Sea was where Old Ben lived.
Yeah,
and I have a suspicion that is actually a specific reference.
Yeah, probably right. So he while he's getting his junk appraised, basically, this dude, they call him a zone tripper.
Zone Trooper, yeah.
And he shows up and he's all whacked out. He's got some crazy funky eyes. Basically, I think it's like kind of a person who's probably radioactive to the degree that they've kind of.
He has here's one thing. He has green eyes, but the green eyes have no imperfections.
Yeah.
They make a very pointed decision to make sure you see his eyes.
Yeah.
And they're eyes that nobody would have, because every eye has imperfections.
Yeah, and he's sort of weird because he bookends the movie.
Yeah.
But he's not really.
He's not a character.
A character. He just sort of gets the movie started, because he, while he's out in the zone, finds the remains of this robotic cyborg of some sort.
They figure it was some sort of maintenance drone.
Yeah. So he's trying to sell it at this shop. Dylan McDermott, Mo, buys it, and he leaves some of the parts with the junker that he doesn't want, that he sells, and he takes the rest home with him because he wants to give them to his girlfriend Jill for Christmas.
Right, and she is kind of a junk artist.
Yeah. So he knows that she would really like it and use it in her art. So a lot is happening in sort of this first 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Even just them walking from the junkyard to the apartment, there's so much world building that's happening. You're getting a sense of what this world is. Their conversation is giving you lots of clues about what type of world we're living in. It's just I find it so fascinating in that first half.
Yeah,
all of this, the little details and information that
one
they give
of the things that they say is that Jill never leaves her house anymore.
Right,
and that you get the impression that she might be whatever a what do they call that? A germaphobe.
Yeah,
is for radioactivity. Like
Yep.
she seems exceptionally concerned about that.
She doesn't like letting people in.
Right.
When Mo and Mo's buddy named Shades, because he wears shades, sunglasses the whole movie.
The whole time, yeah.
She actually checks them with a Geiger counter
Yeah.
before she lets them in. Yeah.
And she's also very worried about her safety, because there's there's a ding dong ditcher that we learn about at the beginning, but we also find out that she's being watched.
We all walk the wibbly wobbly walk.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll get to that creepo later.
Let me. I made a list here of the various things we saw very early in the movie.
Yeah.
So, one, the world is fucked. Two, that there's a constant war going on. We've already talked about that.
Yep.
Radiation everywhere, so much so that the sky is red.
Yep.
Do you want to know what that means in a situation when there's a crisis about to happen?
A red sky at night. Yeah, sure. Tell me.
It's when the multiverses are bleeding.
Oh no! I didn't know that's what you meant. Oh.
Yeah. Robots, probably killer robots.
Yes.
Foamy, gross water.
Yes. That's when Lemmy from Motorhead gives them a
Yep,
ride
Lemmy's
home
in this movie.
on his boat cab.
Yeah, he's playing his own
He's
song.
playing his own song. It's hilarious. He's like, you heard these guys? They're fucking rock or something like that.
Yeah,
It's
and
hilarious.
Ace of Spades. Shithole apartments.
Yeah.
Hotter than fuck outside.
Yep.
Because they said it's Christmas Day and it's going to be
110 degrees. Yeah.
And I get the impression that the night is cold.
Yeah, probably.
Because they say before the sun goes down, it'll be 110.
Uh-huh. Sort of like a desert type climate, probably. Yeah.
Exactly. And then ding dong ditchers.
Yes.
I haven't even gotten to
Yes.
the guy who's spying.
So there's lots of stuff too that there's there is an element of like I think there's a bum that's getting beaten up by children in one of the alleyways as they're walking through.
Oh, I didn't notice
There's
that.
surveillance cameras everywhere. There's just a lot of talk.
It's like a weird mix of absolute lawlessness and absolute lawfulness.
Yeah.
It's like a weird combination of we are going to watch you, but you can still basically do whatever the fuck you want. You know, it's like it's a weird mix.
Yeah. I mean, and like Jill is definitely concerned for her safety, and there is definitely a safety concern among people because the apartment complex has a security unit. they're hilarious. They're like these two dudes who have like football pads on and stuff.
Yeah.
And
two black dudes, one young black guy and one older guy who's had an accent. He's like, but like, but the older guy has like gigantic like linebacker football pads on. Yeah.
So there is still a sense that this is a dangerous place. But yeah, there is sort of that complacency as well that we talked about, where everybody's just kind of getting by. But what I also thought was interesting was when Mo gets to the apartment, Jill's apartment, he makes a comment like, this place 2 months ago was a decent establishment, right? And now it's like there's just all sorts of people milling around in the lobby. There's a guy cutting meat in the the lobby, like a butcher working there.
Well, there's a dead woman with a baby tied to her.
Right, with a baby tied to her. I mean, it is fucking. It's a bad place. Yeah. And Shades makes a comment that that basically a terrorist or somebody bombed the building. Like so drove a car bomb into the lobby.
There is a sense that there are nihilists out there that are willing to just say fuck it.
Yeah.
But we never see it. We're only told it. Yeah. Which means that it's still the exception to the rule. But at the same time, this happened, but you get the sense that the government doesn't care to fix it. Why fix it? Yeah. We're all dead soon anyway.
Exactly.
Also, do you want a welfare check or do you want your building fixed?
Yeah.
And it seems like that sort of kind of, it could be a situation where the apartment buildings like runaway corporate shenanigans or something. I mean,
it's just another indication that they're just running out the clock.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just nothing's getting better.
Just handing the ball off.
Yeah.
Just keep grinding that clock.
Yeah, exactly. So where you have kind of the first half of this movie is tons and tons of world building. It's kind of giving you a sense of the stakes.
There's speaking of world building, my favorite piece of world building is Angry Bob.
Oh God, it's so good.
That is Iggy Pop.
Yeah.
As playing a radio DJ.
Yeah.
Who is basically also popping in at moments that let you know that there's some business going on in the background that's outside this apartment that we're going to spend most of our time in, but it is something that is very important if you start putting the pieces together. Like the first thing he says, like he's talking about how hot it's going to be and how the war keeps going and how there was a Christmas Day armistice that was not followed.
Right.
And then
the body count was like 572 and counting. Yeah,
something like that. And then he says the good news is there is no fucking good news. So it's almost like why even have good news? It's hopelessness. Good news only depresses you in this world,
Yeah, and he's kind of funny because he's sort of like this jolly pessimist.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It's almost borders on realism.
Yeah.
It's almost like a realist would be like, because realists typically are not optimistic because they understand what's happening.
Yeah.
So he's just looking at it like, well, hey, you know what? Let's have fun while we're here.
Exactly.
But
it's all burning, but hey, let's ride it out and have play some rockin' tunes.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so.
Did you notice that I've seen this movie several times, and the radio call station that he is broadcasting from is WAR. Did you notice that?
No.
War?
No.
Yeah. Which I thought was funny.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
There was also television news.
Yeah.
There's also all sorts of weird television. There's like classic movies on one station. There's news on one station that's always delivering some sort of really pessimistic shit.
Yeah.
That's where we mostly learn about the no more babies, more, the sterilization. There's looks like a sex channel, or like there's some real like exploitation shit going on there.
There's some David Cronenberg Videodrome shit going down. Like there was a woman getting whipped. Yeah, at one point.
And because Jill's flipping through the stations, and it feels like at any point in time she might watch whatever is on whatever station.
Right.
But for whatever reason, that night she was not having that whipping business.
She settled on Gwar.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was Gwar.
It looked like it. I mean, not many other rock and roll acts wear like fucking meat on their face.
Yeah,
or whatever,
yeah.
You know. But no, it's so yeah. I mean, I brought up the whole world building thing because, as I like to say, it's the little things. It's the little things that mean something, and it is so forgotten in a lot of modern day science fiction where they either just drop you in and then you have a series of people give you exposition, like directly to camera practically. You don't get a whole lot of what I call more Verhoeven type of stuff, like Robocop stuff, where stuff is happening in the background.
You were spot on when you said while we were watching it, a lot of this feels like sort of like Verhoeven level type of satire, and that's exactly right.
I mean, Robocop, Starship Troopers,
Yep.
it's all in the background.
Yep.
Now, sometimes it's played to you, but it's an ancillary, like almost like a bumper from one scene to the next.
Well, yeah, here's the stupid fucking story, right? About stupid fucking shit. But,
Cyborgs and robots.
But there's all of this stuff happening on the edges where you're actually maybe something is being said. Yeah.
Yes, and what's funny is that it is a if you really want to be pessimistic, you can say, well, yeah, there are several times in our existence that we've been to this brink.
Yeah.
Where war was imminent and we were just lucky at the last second that it didn't happen or whatever. You know, and so, yeah, you know, if you're our age, we remember the Cold War. We remember that there were plenty of times where it was close,
Sure.
you know, or there were tensions rising.
I mean, we grew up with these kinds of movies.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, The Day After, Threads, fucking
well, even something like Mad Max, where
Yes.
it was a petroleum shortage
Right.
that sent the world into chaos.
I mean, War Games.
Yeah.
I mean, this stupid, you know, little Matthew Broderick, Ali Sheedy, cute Ali Sheedy, but it's a movie about the very real possibility of thermonuclear war.
Right.
Yeah, we grew up with this.
Well, and also, you know, I brought up Mad Max. Again, Mad Max was a thing where there was a story up front, and the stuff about the soon to be completely and totally lawless land of everywhere is happening on the sides.
Mm-hmm.
You're learning about petroleum shortage by
Yeah.
offhanded comments or background stuff, and it's the whole point of Mad Max is here's a cop who needs a vacation. He's gonna go spend some vacation time with his wife and
Right.
kid. Oh shit, they're dead. He's gone insane now.
Right.
You know, and so that was no longer ever needed in any of the other sequels. Fuck them. Moving on.
Yep.
It's the wasteland that was created by a shortage of a very important resource that sent everybody into insanity. So yeah, I mean, it's those types of movies that mean something to me.
Yeah.
And this movie had it in spades, just filtering in on the sides and just kind of creeping in like we were a sponge, just soaking it all up.
And I think that was really the point, was for us to latch on to those things and not the story about a killer robot, right?
Right.
Because really it does. The third act kind of devolves into sort of a hallucinogenic trip. We'll talk about it in a minute.
Yeah.
But
so let's talk about the robot.
well, hold on one sec.
Oh, okay.
Well, now I kind of lost my train of thought. Sorry. All right, let's talk about the robot.
Well, if you bring it back, bookmark.
Okay.
Bookmark, and if you think of it, let's
Okay.
do that. So, as you said, Dylan McDermott bought this, the pieces of this robot, gave some to his junk trader, took the rest home to his girlfriend.
Yep.
She is working on a piece of art for somebody. At first, I thought she said for somebody.
Yeah,
but then,
so
then
it's
it kind of
sort of
changes.
unclear because
Yeah.
she had a commission,
Yeah.
for some sort of customizing of consoles or something like that.
Yeah, and it feels like maybe this is just something she was working on the side.
Yeah, I get the sense that maybe she's got a more technical job that she does, but yet she can't work her fucking console later. I don't know. That's pretty unclear.
Yeah, consoles are a big deal because everything in the apartment is run by a console.
Right.
So you see a lot of the mundane life of these people. Like, you see exactly how she starts boiling tea. You notice
Which
that
is the nastiest shit.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
whatever she's got in that tea water is disgusting.
Well, it's just a leaf. It's like a
I
stem
don't.
and
It
a
looked
leaf.
like sticks. Yeah. Oof.
Well, it could. Oh, it could be a stick. It could be
Yeah.
a cinnamon stick or something.
It just looks like.
Yeah.
It looks like. Honestly, it looks like somebody took a handful of the shit you find in your front yard and in fall and just put it in a pot of water. It's gross.
Yeah. Although it did kind of look more like a green tea like thing, so it might be like a green
Maybe
tea.
I don't know.
Anyway, but no, it did. It was not meant to look good.
Yeah.
It looks like urine.
Yeah.
It looked like sewage in there. In fact, I wondered if it was like, is that some sort of like dead fucking animal in there? It's like, anyway,
For flavor.
I guess. So you also know, apparently, it seems as though dope is legal.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact,
Because she has packs of joints.
or pot cigarettes. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you know that she smokes that probably to deal with this is the end of the world, you
Yeah.
know.
She does smoke a lot.
Yeah. Which the creeper guy across the street even says that.
Makes a comment about it. You
so-
smoke a lot of dope.
Does it make him hard?
It's like I've never heard of marijuana making anyone hard. It's not exactly
No, but-
like a
but some of his
libido
dialogue
enhancement.
Yeah. Some of his dialogue, though, kind of made me think, it's like, is this where I'm headed? Is this where I'm headed? in
I'm
another
checking
10
your. I'm
years?
checking you for latex gloves.
Yeah. So anyway, she gets these pieces and she customizes the head of the robot because
Yeah.
nobody's ever seen the head of this robot before, and so she kind of makes it up like an American flag, which I think was meant to be kind of a this is our death.
You
here.
know what's interesting about that? That was an accident.
Really?
Yeah, it was originally supposed to be the rising sun.
Oh, okay.
And then nighttime, right?
Okay.
Night and day is what it was supposed to be originally. And then Richard Stanley, when he saw it made up, he was like, "Holy shit, it's the American flag." Yeah, we're definitely just gonna go with that.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It kind of looked like Peter Fonda's helmet. In
It
Easy
does.
Rider.
You're right. It does.
So anyway, so she sticks that becomes the centerpiece of her piece of art. But as we kind of saw in the opening, but we didn't really piece it. I didn't really piece it together until later. It's not dead.
Right.
Like its eyes glow.
Yeah.
It starts to read things and see things, and the pieces left with the junk trader start to move.
Yeah, you see a lot from the robot's point of view. You see his sort of robot vision a lot, which is pretty on par with 90s special effects robot vision.
Yeah, but it also, I think, it helps drive home the point of what infrared vision would do.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
That's a
It's
very
all
important piece,
infrared. It's super important. Yeah,
Right.
It's a heat seeker. Like that's what
Right.
Richard Stanley calls it. I mean, eventually you find out it's a weapon.
Right.
It's military grade weapon, and it's a drone basically.
Right.
Its sole purpose is to seek out life forms and destroy.
Right, and inject it with something to make the life form enjoy being killed.
Yeah.
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 Which plays in heavily to the third part,
It
which
does.
is really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the robot comes alive. It comes alive in two ways.
Yeah.
Once it kills the junk trader.
Yeah, the
which
hand
the
basically,
hand does.
and it's a self-repairing robot, so it can use the components around it.
And it's constantly sucking energy from
Yep.
whatever. What do they call that?
A console.
Well, that's what it ends up using. But basically, any energy source.
Yeah.
It's sucking power from it.
Yep.
And so the robot at the apartment becomes a relatively detailed robot.
Yeah.
Like it's well put itself back together.
Oh,
And
fun,
then it goes
fun,
rampaging.
fun aside here. the production design and specifically, I think the robot effects and creation were created by Chris Cunningham
Oh,
and Stephen Norrington.
nice.
Yes. So Chris Cunningham is probably most known for his music videos. He directed the very famous Apex Twin window licker video, super creepy. The Bjork video with the robots.
Yeah.
He did a Portishead video.
Do they all have robots in them?
A lot of them have
Okay.
robots. Yeah. And Stephen Norrington, most famous for Blade,
Yeah.
did a little movie a couple years later called Death Machine, where he kind of made his own version of this movie Hardware. It's really, really good. I just watched it for the first time literally 2 weeks ago, and I liked it a lot. It does a lot of the same kind of world building that Hardware does. Probably not quite as strong as Hardware, but in the same ballpark.
You know, another interesting movie that does a little bit of does probably could turn it up a little bit, but does a little bit of that background world building. Robot Jocks.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that one in a long
That's
time.
oh shit, name just Reanimator.
Stuart Gordon.
Yes, Stuart Gordon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd like to see that. Yeah.
That was a classic from our video store days.
Yeah. I remember seeing that box. I don't think I ever picked it up though. I want to say that I've seen it, but I'm not sure that I have.
I remember.
Did MST3K do that?
No. I do remember very, very briefly it played at the General Cinema at the mall.
Really?
Yeah, it was just kind of one of those spring fill-ins.
Yeah.
Like, we just got to put something out there. Like, that's how Carnosaur got played in the theater there.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So it's like, yeah, there was a time in the early 90s that it's like, we just got to fill something before the summer movie season starts. Yeah. So anyway.
So, yeah, back on with kind of what's happening in the movie. Yeah, I mean,
So
the robot goes crazy.
rampaging.
Rampage robot.
Yeah, and pretty much the rest of the movie is a cat and mouse game with the robot. Interestingly enough, that also was foreshadowed a little bit with her capturing that spider.
Oh, yeah.
Because the robot becomes the spider in this case, trying to hunt these.
Oh, neat. Yeah, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I caught that immediately because then the robot looks at the spider.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, duh.
What's funny about this movie is I've probably seen the first 45 to 50 minutes twice as many times as I've seen the whole movie.
Well, that's the movie I would rather watch.
Right, because I really, really, really like the first half of this movie so much, and usually, like by the time it kind of gets into the cat and mouse, and the horror element of the movie and the gore, I kind of start to tune out a little bit.
Well, the problem I had with this movie, let's just dive into the problem I had here, because we're pretty much there. By the way, they beat the robot. I mean, she beats the robot.
Literally beats the robot with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a tale of two movies for me. Have you ever thought? Now, this is something that
I do remember what I was going to say too, and it plays into this.
Okay. Have you ever looked at a bunch of movies or whatever and just say, these are movies that I like the first half more, or this sequence or this act more, and then this other, or, in other movies it's this other ending part?
Yeah.
Like, trying to think of a good example. I used to think that a lot, where it's like, if this movie just kept going with this section, even if it doesn't tell a story, I like what's going on in this section.
Sure. Yeah.
I kind of got that. I used to feel that way a lot more when I was younger. I would say it's like, okay, well, this first half I like way more than the second half, or the second half I like way. Like, I didn't like the movie at first, then it got to this point and I was in. I'm trying to think of.
Yeah, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I know exactly what that feeling is like.
And I started kind of feel that again. I hadn't really thought about that I used to think that way for a long time now. Like, that's the thing that's like, that was probably more specifically when I was a teenager that I felt that way, because I was watching more movies during those years than any other time in my life. including when I worked at a video store and when I worked at the movie theater.
Yeah.
But there's usually always something that turns it, right? Like it's like, like for example, it's like this character that we were supposed to be rooting for turned out to be a bad guy or something, and that turned it, and I'm like, and it's like,
You're not as invested.
Right, I'm not as invested anymore. Well, this kind of happened here, where it's like pretty much so Dermot, wait.
Dermot.
No, it's,
Dylan McDermott. Not Dermot Mulroney. Yeah.
So
or Rupert Everett.
Right. Dylan McDermott realizes what's going on with he gets a call from his junk trader who figured out that this is some sort of monster robot thing. And he's like, you got to come, you got to bring the stuff. You got to come back here. We got to talk about this. This is big time shit going on.
Well, yeah, he's seeing dollar signs.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, Dylan McDermott goes to see the guy. He's dead. And then he realizes through the recordings that the guy made of his notes, holy shit, this thing is a fucking killer robot that is like a Terminator at this point. It's not going to stop. It's got to be, whatever. So he rushes back home. Basically, from the time, and she's trapped inside of her apartment with a creepy pervert guy who lives across the street who has he has a desire to fuck her up the ass with a string of popcorn.
Yes. He wants to take her down the Hershey Highway.
Yes.
Yeah.
He basically spies on her.
He's a voyeur.
He's a voyeur, and he jerks off all the time to
her.
Which I don't blame him.
We see him for the first time when he is
Dylan McDermott had just come home.
Mo and Jill are having sex. They're making love, doing the dance, and he is like talking to himself in a really creepy way, giving her commands.
Yeah.
While he's photographing them from a
dick.
very big distance with a super high powered camera.
Yeah. And then he
squeeze that tube, Jeff.
Yeah, squeeze that tube. That's so gross.
And he's got latex gloves on. I'm not quite sure why.
He probably doesn't like the touch
and
of his own dick.
He's got like a cold sore on his mouth.
He's gross, man.
And he's sort of like drooling. It's fucking gross. And who's he played by, Jeff?
William Hootkins.
Yeah.
Who is Lieutenant Eckhart in Batman and also Porkins in Star Wars.
There you go.
Another reference.
He's
to
about
Star
as
Wars.
creepy as all get out in this.
Yep.
Yeah.
About as creepy as I'll be in about 15 years.
He's scarier than the robot.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Because at one point in time, he decides to come over because he knows Dylan McDermott.
Yeah. Just call him Mo.
Mo has left because he went to go see his junk trader friend. The robots come to life. The robot is fucking with the doors, basically building a web to trap them in. And so, he comes in he says he can fix the console to open up the doors. Of course, he gets fucking gutted big time. And exactly as much blood as I thought a big fat ass was going to have.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So you were talking about like the moment that it turns.
Right. So that's exactly what I'm getting to, because Dylan McDermott's sends Shades to go get Jill, and he's rushing home.
Yeah.
And basically the moment that they were able to open the door was the moment that the movie turned for me. Up to that point, it's like, wow, this is really kind of an interesting, it's like it's all confined in this area, which also gives you a claustrophobia feel. This robot is smart and learning. Mm-hmm. Like they even make the point to show later when she learns how to defeat it that it learns from its surroundings. And you learn about like, oh, he sees an infrared, so I can hide in the freezer,
Right.
The problem is after that is when the movie just doesn't just go off the rails. It like fucking jumps off the rails, gets into the other, into the other rail, and is playing chicken with a train coming full speed ahead at it, because they shoot the robot out the window. And they think the robot's smashed on the ground.
And honestly, it feels like a pretty satisfying ending.
That would have been a completely and total. I would have loved that ending.
Yeah.
But what happens is the robot's hanging onto the side, and it's like at the little transistor
junction box or whatever.
Junction box, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like getting power.
Get
and
more
it
power.
pulls Jill off. So she's hanging on the wire. Mo can't touch her because he's grounded. They're gonna fry if he touches her. So the robot clips the wire. She goes swinging into the apartment below where this poor Asian family just wants peace and quiet.
Yeah.
That was a whole thing in the movie. And it seems as though she's dead.
Right.
Like she's eyes open, sprawled, like dead, like legitimately dead. And it's like, man, fuck this. It's like she did everything right up until that moment, and that moment wasn't her fault.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's a shitty way to end. It's like we've been following. She's truly the star of the movie.
Yep.
Mo gets top billing, but she's the star of the movie.
Star. Stacey Travis is the
yes.
actress name, and I don't think she's ever done much of anything.
She's working to this day.
She's
on
working?
a lot of TV shows now.
Oh, well, good for her.
So now Mo takes on the robot because now he thinks the robot's killed his girl. It's like he's pissed. And so the robot, like in the course of taking on the robot, hits him with the happy juice. And so he just kind of slumps. And this is when things go, this is...
Yeah. So
this is off the rails and into the incoming train.
So I think I don't know. I mean, he gets injected, and you're supposed to die like a happy death from this hallucinogenic drug. Really, I think Richard Stanley wanted to take us down just a funky acid trip, probably.
Well, probably because he didn't know exactly what to put in there that would have been satisfying in any.
But it's a bit confusing because they say earlier in the movie that it actually makes you happy when you die. But he is like cutting himself and he's seeing worms. And and it seems like not so.
Seems
pleasant.
like a bad trip.
Yeah, it seems like a real bad trip.
Now that could be because the robot rebuilt itself with whatever it could.
Maybe, but I think the drug should be the same.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. It's
but I think ideally, probably what's supposed to be conveyed there is this complacency again, like this hammering home this idea of this total kind of society that has put itself to sleep.
I guess, yeah. But I
mean,
mean
that's probably grasping at a few straws.
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's like, okay, so he just killed himself. So now it's
I'm not saying it makes for a good third act.
Because here's the thing, it's like we got the fake out with Jill, and then she comes back, and now he's gone, and then she's trying to go, and it's like his robot hand twitches for a second.
So you think
to
maybe
warn her, like maybe he's back. No, he's dead.
Yeah.
And then on top of that,
is that sort of the part of the power supply? Like maybe he's got
maybe it's just like it's ebbing out. Or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah. But anyway, he's like, so, and then like, of course, the robot then has his voice when she's asking it about what its programming is.
And that's another confusing part because she's got it frozen. She's essentially doing diagnostics on it and trying to determine what it is and how to defeat it. And it's sort of like frozen. It can't really do anything. So maybe just keep doing that and then go fucking destroy it.
Right.
Right? Like while it can't move.
Right.
So it didn't really make a ton of sense
basically, what kind of comes through or what she remembers is that it is weak to humidity and water.
Water, yeah.
Which is not a huge deal because it doesn't rain anymore. That point is made a ton.
Yeah.
That it doesn't rain anymore. But so then she basically lures it into the shower, turns the water on it, and it's fucking toast.
Yeah, but like the aliens in Science.
Yeah.
Swing away, Jeff.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, no,
it gets really dumb in the third act, and that's a shame.
And it loses me because it's trying to be trippy, but it doesn't really say anything. It's like, it's not like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is a very trippy movie, but it has a message. It has a through point or a through line, and it's like, I get what's going on there, even if we're not supposed to fully believe that anything is happening for real.
Yeah.
It's like, I get what's going on there, and I get what the point is while going on this trip. This is just fucking kookiness. It's just kooky.
There's a couple things here. I think when Richard Stanley made this movie, he had several scripts written, and this just so happened to be the one that he thought would be the most marketable of what he had, because there was this small little film studio that had started in London that was looking for stuff. He was friends with them. They actually owned a cinema as well, where he got a lot of his sort of film education was at this cinema in London. And they wanted to make a movie, and they wanted to make maybe one of his movies. And he was like, well, what about this one? And it's like, this will probably sell. It's about a fucking killer robot who doesn't like those movies, you know?
Well, shit, the Terminator was already big by then.
Right,
you know?
yeah. And so they're like, yeah, and then everybody liked the script a lot. But I think there's a sense that yes, this is a marketable movie, and there's a dumb elements to it, and right down to the fact that they use extensively the Public Image Limited song "The Order of Death," which has the recurring line of "This is what you want, this is what you get." That is not a mistake. That is telling you as the audience member, oh, this is what you want in a movie, right? This is what we're going to give you.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely intentional.
Right, and for an hour, it is exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
You know?
But I think that there's a sense of, yes, this is a dumb movie that is a very conventional plot that we're feeding to you, the consumer, right? Because it's what we know that you want to see. But Richard Stanley, being Richard Stanley, is also packing in all of this stuff around the periphery and telling you subliminally, subversively, however he's telling you all the stuff that he as an artist wants to convey as well. Right? It's the Verhoeven effect. So so that to me is really what makes this movie so interesting.
Yeah. No, and yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I would say watch the first hour.
Yeah.
Watch it 1.5 times, because the moment they shoot that goddamn robot out the window, the movie should be over.
Yeah. There's nothing really added
Right.
after that.
Now, there are some interesting things about the robot, like that this is the robot that is going to carry out the population control.
Yes.
We learn after they destroy the robot and everything is saved, Angry Bob tells us that, oh, hey, they've passed they've passed the idea to start making these new Mark 13,
Yep.
which is also important to the Bible. There's a verse in Mark 13.
Yes, no flesh shall be spared.
Right. So basically,
Which was also a mistake. That was total happenstance.
Really?
Yeah. So this was a story in the documentary that they named it the Mark 13. I don't know what Mark, M-A-R-K, stands for.
I always just assumed it was like Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 13.
But
it is abbreviated.
But the 13, Mark 13, weirdly enough, apparently Dylan McDermott was into the Bible at this time. This is what Richard Stanley says. It said that he looked up Mark 13 and he saw that line in that chapter of the no flesh shall be spared, and he told Richard, and Richard was like, oh my God, yes, we're using that.
Yeah. This is a very religious movie
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. Like, there's the part where Dermot Mulroney's reading passages from the Bible, both in real world and in his hallucination as he's dying, which you pointed out in the hallucination. He's got a cyborg arm in real life.
Yeah.
And in the hallucination, he has both of his hands, meaning assuming that he's now passing into the afterlife or something.
Yeah.
And that he's in his version of heaven or whatever. Because also, if I'm not mistaken, was it Sunny in that?
It might have been.
Because he also talked about dreaming of rain and basically normal weather at that point. But the first part is very interesting, but when it gets to the conclusion or to the resolution of the conflict, it's all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's there's too much fake out, there's too much psychedelic, I don't know.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I agree. Like I said, I watched the first half of this movie lots. I don't always watch the whole movie. Yeah.
Right.
Now, so there's a couple interesting factoids here about the release of this movie itself. It was running out of money. Eventually, I think initially they wanted to fund this with £250,000 or something like that, which wasn't going to happen. It ended up going over $1.5 million US, I believe. To get that extra money, they had to sell rights to Miramax. So the Weinsteins are executive producers on this. This movie actually made money. I think it made about $600 million, or sorry, not $600 million, Jesus, $6 million at the box office across 700 screens in the domestic U.S. It was probably Miramax's first legitimate hit as far as a moneymaker goes. It was 1990, I think. So, that's before any of the big sort of tentpole films and award winners. It's before Pulp Fiction, for sure. So that is kind of an interesting sort of thing there, that this little movie that no one really has probably really seen or heard of in a long time.
When you say that it made a ton of money, it's like, to be honest with you, I don't know if I remember seeing it in the video store, but I never really thought about it, and I never certainly heard of it before I ever saw the.
Yeah, it made $7 million or something like that,
which is funny, because if you ever think about it, it's like if something doesn't make $1 billion these days, it's a fucking garbage pile.
I think more than anything, it's just against its budget.
It was a
huge
movies
success.
aren't made at those kind of budgets anymore like that.
But even when it debuted at number 3 that weekend.
Yeah, which is something that I would have been well aware of what was performing at the box office.
Yeah.
Even in 1990, I knew that sort of stuff.
But it's got some rights disputes. So this movie actually didn't really get much in the way of distribution in the home video market. Not a lot. I think it had maybe a VHS release. It didn't get a DVD release for many, many years until Severin was able to put it out on Blu-ray. I don't know how they were able to work it all out, because there are several different companies involved, including Miramax, who I think even Buena Vista at one point owned part of this movie. It still may own elements of it. There was the whole debacle with the 2000 AD company.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that, because
essentially it was determined by a court and a judge that this movie was very, very closely related to a short comic put out by 2000 AD called Shock, SHOK ! That essentially the plot was a self-repairing robot that terrorized a woman in her apartment. I mean, it was kind of like dead on, right? Now, obviously, it didn't have all the world building and everything and all the elements that Richard Stanley poured into this script, but it was close enough, and so there were damages. I think, I don't know what they call it.
I'm sure there's
there was some sort of out of court settlement on the rights, and so technically 2000 AD has a stake in this movie. So there were so many people and entities that this movie never got released on DVD until 2009, when Severin was able to put it out. I mean, there's probably a good story there. I don't know what it is as to how they were actually able to put the movie out. It does feature prominently, like I was telling you, Jeff, earlier, in the 2000 AD documentary that Severin also put out,
which was called Future Shock.
Future Shock, yeah. So that's just kind of interesting. It's Richard Stanley hasn't really come right out and said that he ripped it off, but he was a huge fan of 2000 AD. He would admit that, and I think really what it kind of was is a subconscious thing.
Probably.
It was probably something he read that got stuck in his head, and he built a world around it. He actually made a short film called Incidents in an Expanding Universe. That's about 45 minutes on Super 8 when he was 17. That was the early version of hardware that incorporated some of those elements. So he was definitely building a bigger idea around what he probably thought was just this little kernel from a 2000 AD comic that ended up, becoming a copyright issue.
Well, and you can say, "Oh, I'm inspired by this episode of Twilight Zone. Let me do something similar to that." And that's one thing that you could do those types
Certainly.
of things. And obviously, the more you cross the line into straight up pulling the exact elements, that's when you can get, and they'll look at how many points do they touch,
Right.
And
I think that the argument was it was the core of the story of hardware is the core of this short comic, and it was just too closely aligned.
Sure.
And they'll probably have a point.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, it's not Richard Stanley who's being held accountable at that point. It's, Miramax or that, Image something was the name of the Image Entertainment.
Palace Pictures was the original.
Somebody had
studio involved.
Somebody's footing that bill,
Yeah, it was originally a $200,000 budget, pounds really, but Palace Pictures. They had a theater in London called the Scala Scala. Richard Stanley said that they once showed all of Argento's films chronologically back to back to back, and that's when the first time he'd seen an Argento picture. He watched them all projected by the Scala in London. Yeah.
How many hours was that?
I don't know. They also did an underground showing of Driller Killer.
Nice.
Yeah, when it was banned as a video nasty. Yeah.
So Richard Stanley, I'll touch upon this real quick. I got much deeper into Richard Stanley as a weirdo from the documentary made called Lost Souls, which was about the doomed making of his version of The Island of Dr. Moreau. And he was a huge fan of Island of Dr. Moreau, and there's a story to tell there about that. It's an old novel that that came out during a time when it was very kind of in vogue to dissect and do various things to animals and stuff like that. There have been movies made over the time. Island of Lost Souls is a famous version made in the early 30s from Universal. It sometimes gets wrapped up in the Universal classics. Then there was one made in 1977 that was called The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Was that the Burt Lancaster one?
Yes. Yeah. And Richard Stanley always said, well, they don't quite get it right. There's more here to tell than just animal people. Although the famous line from the Devo song, "Are We Not Men," comes from the 32 Island of Dr. Moreau.
Does it?
Yeah.
There is a 1921 German version of Moreau as well, called "The Island of the Lost." That that's on the release that Severin did again of the documentary we're talking about here. Yeah.
So it's and it's kind of a sad story. Like this is almost a madness that happens. So Hardware comes out.
Yeah.
And was Dust Devil in between?
Dust Devil was 2 years after Hardware.
Okay. So
there was supposed to be a Hardware too. There's actually a script, but because of all the rights, it just never got done. And he eventually just released the script online and is like, for anybody who's interested. And then he made Dust Devil.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Hardware had come out and made a pretty big splash. A lot of people thought, wow, this guy's got something.
Yeah.
Dust Devil came out, and I think that was a little bit more
tanked
mixed.
Big time.
But I think opinion of it is also mixed.
Yeah.
but still, he still had the juice from Hardware to basically sell his vision of the Island of Lost Souls.
Right.
And I don't remember which. It was a New Line. New Line's like, hey, we're riding that check.
Yeah, it was New Line.
And so things are starting to look pretty up. And then you get these massive egos to come in because you have Robert Shea, who runs New Line or ran New Line. I don't like him very much.
Oh, I don't like him at all.
He's got a massive ego.
Yep.
Marlon Brando comes in and really wants to do this movie, but there's a problem with Marlon Brando.
Oh, Christ.
It's been a problem with Marlon Brando for 20 years before, too, which is he will only work when he wants to work.
Yep.
I guess part of the nightmare of Apocalypse Now was due to him. He was paid more than anybody else to make Superman, and he only worked for 3 weeks.
Jesus.
And basically it was however Richard Donner could get him out of his trailer to
Why
work.
do you even bother? I don't even know.
Well, Marlon Brando carries a lot of weight.
Does he?
Literally.
Yeah.
He's a big old fat ass in this movie.
Yeah, he is.
In Island.
And I love Dr. Moreau. Yeah.
Then you have the maybe at his apex, you have Val Kilmer.
Oh, yeah.
Who decides he wants to play a different character last minute. He decides he doesn't want to shoot money. He's going through a divorce or something.
Val Kilmer is probably the biggest reason, other than Shea at New Line, that this movie ended up becoming the disaster it became.
Yeah, because really honestly, you don't have to worry too much about Brando because he only has so many scenes anyway.
Right.
Val Kilmer, I guess, just basically made life hell. And also, Brando and Kilmer did not like each other whatsoever.
Yeah, and Kilmer was basically making stories up and telling them to New Line. He wanted Richard Stanley off the show. Most of the people in that actually respected Richard quite a bit. Fairuza Balk, probably number one among them.
Yeah, she tried to flee, but couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically,
and David Thewlis too. Yeah.
So anyway, they call in a ringer. In John Frankenheimer.
He's going to French Connection the fuck out of this movie.
The problem is, though, he's only made a couple of really good movies.
Yeah.
He's made a lot of garbage movies. A lot of garbage movies. This is one. Island of Dr. Moreau is absolutely one of them. He doesn't give a flying fuck about the movie. He's just collecting a paycheck, saying action, and then cut when he needs to. Literally, the inmates are running the asylum, much like what happens in the story of Dr. Moreau. But anyway, you got to see it. It is almost unbelievable what happens on this movie set and the torture and ultimately maybe the insanity that Richard Stanley now has to live with from that.
Yeah, I mean, it really ended his career. He's made some documentaries since then. He's made a few short films, but yeah, he never got another major motion picture.
And maybe to a certain extent, maybe he just doesn't want to.
Yeah, I don't really think he does.
I mean, he got so, just. I mean, it was a bad situation.
It was. Hardware is very clearly a picture where he got probably 90% of his vision on the screen,
or at least 90% of his vision that he could afford.
Yeah, and he didn't really want a U.S. cast. He didn't want it to be a U.S. movie, really. Dylan McDermott wasn't his choice. The character wasn't really written for a person like that, but he worked with it. He was like, well, we're getting extra money for Miramax. I'll get to do a lot of the stuff I want to do that I wouldn't be able to do. He was willing to make a sacrifice like that.
It's very likely that Miramax says, we'll pump this movie up with some more money, but you have to kind of do these things. It has to be marketable in the United States.
But at the end of the day, I think that he knew the script was kind of stupid anyway, and it was like, I can make a really cool movie.
Yeah, I can
And it
make
did.
something that gets my foot in the door.
Yeah, and it did. It worked. And then he actually got his true passion project, because I mean, if you listen to this man talk about Moreau, he put everything he had into this thing.
Well,
like everything
some of his
creatively you can
design
imagine.
ideas are just insane.
Yeah.
But in the right way,
It would have
in
been
the good
so
way.
good. He knew it. He understood the material.
Now, I don't know if the movie would have sold a single ticket, to be honest with you, because he was thinking of adapting, like, being very cerebral about the adaptation or the adaptation of the book to the to the screen, and he was thinking very, very seriously about what each thing in the book means.
Yeah.
So, it's like, I don't know if it would have ever sold a ticket, and certainly that would have probably been problematic for New Line. And
I bet it would have been fine.
Well, what would have probably ended up happening was maybe it doesn't sell any tickets, but maybe it would have gotten some production design Oscar nomination or something. Maybe it would have been considered.
It would have been
some
a
stuff.
hell of a lot better and more well regarded than what the fuck they put out.
Yeah, I remember skipping classes to see that at Circle Center. It's like, I drove to IUPUI and I thought, fuck it, I'm going to go see Island of Dr. Moreau. And then I remember
I think I saw
there,
the old Sony.
I remember sitting there and the movie's over and I'm like, well, that wasn't at all what I thought it was going to be. Oh, shit. I could have gone and gotten an education instead.
There are things about that movie that I do like. Honestly, as batshit as he is, Marlon Brando brings just something almost impossible not to watch.
Well,
you can't take your eyes off
right.
what he's doing in that movie. It's
and that's
absolutely
what Brando
bonkers.
brings. I mean,
And the whole thing with like the smallest man in the world, who plays his sidekick.
Without him, you would not have Mini-Me for the Austin Powers movie.
Right. And that's that. Yeah, that was all fucking Marlon Brando. He's like, no, he needs to be in the movie more. He needs to be my sidekick, and he needs to dress just like me. And he had his own fucking mini piano that he played on top of Marlon Brando's piano. That is some bonkers shit that I love.
Yeah, it works.
That I love.
Also, Brando's idea that if he took off his hat, he's like a dolphin man.
Yes.
And he's trying to sell that idea to Robert Shea, and Shea's like, "Oh no, we've got problems."
Oh god. That to me is like, yes, more of that.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just go full tilt fucking bonkers Brando.
Because it seemed like Brando bought into the weirdness of the
Absolutely
story.
he did.
And he's like, well, I can make this even weirder.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah.
So anyway, check out that documentary. It's called
For
Lost
sure.
Soul. What's it called? Lost Soul.
It's called Lost Soul, The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau. You can pick it up on Severin. It might also still be on Amazon Prime streaming if you have that.
Yeah, and I want to say for a time it was on Shudder too, I think.
Could be. Yep.
Anyway, that is a fascinating
It
look
really
at
is.
what can happen to artistic projects when you're trying to make a buck.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to when you need the money from a studio, but then you have to make the movie make money for a studio, weird shit starts to happen. Really weird shit starts to happen.
So
as far as hardware goes.
So I'm just gonna read Joe Bob Briggs's.
He's come up recently.
Yeah, he on the back of the DVD is the is his quick sentence thought. He says, "It's the best nuclear radiation twisted metal jubilee since the original Mad Max. 4 stars. Check it out."
Check it out. I'm not going to give that much. So I don't know. On a scale of 1 to 110 degrees, because that's how hot it was going to be on Christmas Day.
Yep.
There's a lot there too. Like, it devolves fast. 75.
75. All right. I put this movie in the 90s. I'll probably watch the first 50 minutes again in a few weeks. I revisit this movie a lot. I always catch something a little bit new. The whole thing with like the birth was a total revelation to me that you mentioned earlier in this episode. I think that's phenomenal. There's stuff there to mine, and because I feel like it's probably the one. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's not the one thing that is pure Richard Stanley. Dust Devil is pure Richard Stanley. I don't think he had any interference in his creative vision in that movie. I don't necessarily think it's the best, but it's fascinating. But Hardware has that too, and like I said, I kind of just find myself drawn to Stanley's creativity. So I just, anything I can pick up that he's involved in, I like to digest in some way. There's so many documentaries he's made that I haven't even watched yet that I kind of am slowly assimilating, because I do believe that when you use the word auteur, that Stanley is an auteur. I think he has a vision, he has a style, he has an artistic expression that is singularly his.
Well, and to quote Joe Bob, he is kind of a weird beard, though.
And he's a weird beard.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, it's going to reach people in different ways, and I'm sure there are people who may find some sort of meaning in the part that I start to check out of, and it just kept going. And it's like I'm looking at the clock on the DVD player, and it's like, they shoot that fucking robot out the window at like the hour mark or whatever, and I'm like, oh no, there's like still
20 minutes left or 30 minutes left. Yeah.
It's like, oh no, oh no. It's like we're at the satisfying conclusion.
It's true.
So it's like, again, if it stopped there, even if it was just an hour-long movie, I felt satisfied with what I saw. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah. Richard Stanley, go down the rabbit hole if you dare. You should check out Hardware. You should most definitely check out the Island of Dr. Moreau documentary.
Not the
actual movie, unless honestly, it's a movie.
I mean, there's still some.
It's a movie I go back to sometimes as well. I don't own it, but I'll probably pick it up at some point just because I'm a completist that way, and watch it again one day. It does pair really interestingly with the documentary, because you get a bit of a frame of reference for some of this stuff,
especially some of the weird stuff that just was kind of filling in the blanks, and it's like, oh, that's. Yeah. But it's kind of interesting also because it's like each of the previous versions of Island of Dr. Moreau had some sort of Catwoman in it, and that carried through here when he didn't really mean to.
Right.
Because that character doesn't exist in the book. Anyway.
But yeah.
Check it out. I mean, it's going to be one of those things where it's like, like I was saying, it's gonna hit certain people's sweet spots.
And we should
various
do
places.
We should do Death Machine sometime as well, because I think it's a good companion piece.
Can we also do
Hardware.
Chopping Mall?
Yes. Oh, fuck yes on Chopping Mall. That's so good.
That is on a different level of art.
That's what Joe Bob would call bubblegum horror.
Yeah, it's a right. It's Jim Wynorski. Under the production of Roger Corman.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a silly movie. It's fun.
Yeah, and it's only like 70 minutes.
Yeah.
So, anyway, you can find new episodes every week at filmseizure.com. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at filmseizure.
Yes, and please do send us an email sometime and say, hey. You can email us at filmseizure@gmail.com.
Yeah, and just say, hey. And get off my lawn. We also accept commands like that.
Yeah.
It's like, please get off our lawn.
And
please wear clothing when you go out to get your mail. I hear that one sometimes.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yikes.
Yeah.
We need to get you a house coat.
I've got one, but it's too hot right now. It's summertime. Anyway, but yeah. let us know what you would like for us to talk about.
And what's that next week?
Next week is wait, let's see here. This is coming. Oh, Megaforce. It's next week with Megaforce.
yes.
So yeah, we round out August with Deeds, Not Words.
Deeds, not words.
And Megaforce.
Until
the
then,
best bad movie ever. With the most amazing special effects I've ever seen.
and it's G.I. Joe the movie.
Pretty much.
It kind of ties back into our Transformers discussion
Yeah,
a little bit.
So until then,
I'm Jason Oliver,
I am Jeff Arbuckle.
and you've been listening to Film Seizure.
Adios.
Amigos.